For so many people, you become what you do every day. And you don't realize like this is only one hat that I wear. There's so much more to me. There's so much more value than just like my label as an attorney.
Welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast. Danielle Lyn, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am very, very well. I am so excited that we connected. I'm going to try not to rush through and tell the people all the stuff, but would you tell the audience how we know each other and what you do?
So I am an attorney. I've been practicing now for 8 years, but I am currently transitioning out of the legal field. And what I'm looking to do is to become a speaker, trainer, consultant, and a coach. I want to coach specifically people who are mid-career millennials, just like myself, who have kind of discovered that what they've been doing so far is not necessarily aligned with the passion and purpose that they feel like they have, and help to guide them in navigating that pivoting journey by kind of displaying my own journey openly for everyone to see. But I still do have a passion for increasing minority representation within the legal field, specifically African American lawyers, as we are only about 5% of the lawyers in the United States. So I'm also going to be coaching aspiring law students and law students through their process, as well as someone who's kind of like a vet in the game.
Yeah.
Kyla, we're connected via LinkedIn, and I actually sent you a connection request in the beginning of all of this. I also have a podcast as well. My specific podcast is like 2 years in the making. And I kept saying, I can't do this. This is crazy. I'm an attorney. Like this, how do you make that transition? Number one, how do you explain to people that this is something that you want to do? And then how do you get rid of those self-defeating thoughts? And I don't even know how. I don't know if it's because my phone was listening to me, your profile popped up, or something that you posted popped up on LinkedIn. And I was like, wow, this is inspiring to see someone who not only had the same desires, but is actively doing it. Sometimes you just need to see someone else chasing the dream to believe that you have the ability to do so as well. So this is kind of like a full circle moment for me.
Yeah. I love what you just said. And also at the same time, I'm like, I haven't really done anything. And then I'm like, I had to check myself, like, actually, you have. So you heard it here first. I am starting a new podcast. I actually started recording episodes yesterday because every day I write on my calendar something I've done for my business or the podcast every day. And it's kind of like my own evidence report where I can kind of scroll back and be like, oh, that's right, you did that. Oh, you sent those follow-up emails that turned into this. And I'm not the type to quit, but when I started, I definitely did not see myself being 188 episodes in. I just could not think that far. But I'm going to share 3 to 4 things that I've done every day and then encourage people to either make their own list of stuff that they've done or just celebrate the little things they've done in their business. Because I believe that those micro goals add up to the success that we achieve. But it doesn't feel like a lot to you. You know what I mean? At the moment, it's just like, oh, okay, I have to review this one contract. But then I just want to be done. But yeah, you reviewed that contract and now you've reviewed 150 contracts and now you are a contract administrator. And so I just think that we always need that evidence of the stuff that we've done.
I love that. I think that that is really important because we tend to not celebrate our wins unless they feel like huge, extravagant wins. But things done consistently over time are really what lead to lasting victories. So I think that it is not only just cool to be able to hear some of the things that you have accomplished, but also to take that minute to slow down yourself and learn how to do that for yourself as well. That is one of the goals I have in 2025, is just to give myself more grace, but to also recognize those small day-to-day wins and celebrate those more often, probably more often than the bigger wins. But I work for a financial services company. I do specifically employee relations, employment law, compliance, and regulatory kind of compliance review for a financial services company.
Yeah. And so is this something that you went to law school for? Were you in law school thinking that compliance would be something that was really exciting to you or something that you would enjoy doing?
Absolutely not. I didn't even know compliance was a thing. When I entered law school in the fall of 2013. I had just wrapped up my bachelor's degree. I had just graduated from Florida State in December. So I moved home for a few months before fall semester started. And at that time, the Trayvon Martin trial was actually being done and it was being broadcasted. So I had a position as a paralegal at a real estate firm in South Florida, and I had it on in the background every day. And so that was what I really thought I was going to do. I felt as though the prosecution didn't really paint Trayvon as a victim. The public kind of forced them to even press charges. So let's start there. And because of that, I felt like we needed more representation from the state side, from the prosecution side, to tell our stories and paint us as humans and paint us as victims when we are victimized. So that was my goal. When I got to law school, that changed relatively quickly. I knew that I wanted to be a trial attorney. So when I got to law school, I didn't really go, I know people push like law review and stuff. I wasn't really interested in that. I wanted to be a trial attorney. So I got onto our trial team in my second year of law school. I did client counseling competition as well. I was on that team as well as negotiation team. But I really wanted to be in the courtroom. The criminal aspect changed, however, in my third year when I was a part of the criminal defense clinic at my school. And when I realized the nitty gritty of criminal law, I was like, I don't want to do this. On top of the fact that unfortunately, as a public servant, you are not paid very well. So I had student loans coming in from undergrad. I accumulated more student loan debt in law school. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to pay this on this type of salary. What opened me up to the prospect of corporate law in general was when I took business organizations in my second year of law school. I didn't, for some reason, it's like you know that corporations exist, but you don't really think like, oh, there are lawyers that work for them, right? That handle
Yeah.
their day to day issues. And when I took that class, it was a very difficult class, but it was very interesting. And that's what opened me up to the prospect of becoming a corporate attorney. Funny enough, though, I went to FAMU College of Law, so shout out to FAMU, shout out to the Rattlers. One of the things that I wish would change about how law school is kind of taught or what is instilled in law students currently, it's a very limiting belief. So I love my school, but just to put them out there, a lot of the rhetoric that we heard was you have to pay your dues. So you need to go
Yeah.
to the prosecutor's office. You need to be a criminal defense attorney. And once you pay your dues for like 5, 10 years, then you can transition into corporate law or judicial clerkship or things of that nature. So it limited us in our belief of what we could really do. So I had this thought process that, okay, yeah, let me go be a prosecutor for a few years and then I'll be able to transition into corporate law. I never thought that I would be able to do that. I became an attorney. I passed the bar in 2016 and I got my corporate job in 2020 in the midst of COVID.
Wow.
But I didn't
Yeah.
think that that was going to be a thing for me. It happened because of the hard work that I put in, but also some of the things that I did while I was in law school. So, one of the things that I tell mentees of mine who may be in law school or aspiring law students is to cast your net wide. Don't have this false belief that, okay, I just graduated from law school, so I can't open my own firm. I won't be successful. Also, to expand your thinking past just the practice of law. Because sometimes, unfortunately, you get into the practice of law and find out, I don't actually enjoy doing this. And that
Yeah.
is something that the law school experience does not teach you. It doesn't show you. People don't talk about that part of it enough that you might one day get into this field and realize, like, I'm burnt out. But there are so many other things that you can do with the knowledge and expertise you got from just getting your JD alone. It's been a kind of rough journey for me because I've had to kind of buck against my own self defeating thoughts that are very similar. But that is one thing I would instill in law students as well is to look at JD alternative careers. Just know the value of the education that you're getting. And if you don't want to be a practicing attorney, you don't have to be. You can still be
Yeah.
successful with the knowledge that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I think law schools need like a better PR team or something
Yes.
because people go to medical school and they don't come out feeling like doctors. They have to do the residency. And I almost feel like lawyers need that as well, because we come out and we're like, hey, and it's like you basically went through a more intense undergrad because you know a little bit about trials and you know a little bit about torts, you know a little bit about medical malpractice. You haven't
In
specialized in
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
And so you become that first year associate and now you're specializing and you're like, am I supposed to know this?
Absolutely. It's very, very theory based. It's not
Yeah.
the practicality of what it looks like to do the day-to-day practice of law. Like you don't even know how to file a
Yeah.
case. If you needed to file a case in court, who do you call? What are the court fees and costs that are associated with filing a case? You don't know how to do that. And then it kind of drops in
Yeah.
your lap once you pass the bar, and it's this is supposed to be like your dream job. So when you have that wake up call that like I don't really know what I'm doing, it feels like you're crazy, and it makes you think like, did I really earn this law degree? Yes, you did,
Yes.
because you know what you need to know, but you just don't know how to become this person. And I think that
Yeah.
those conversations are missing from the curriculum. And I think more attorneys just in general need to be transparent about kind of how rough it can be those first few years. Because I will say I did not feel secure as an attorney for like the first 4 to 5 years that I was in practice. It took that long for me to be like, all right, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah. And I mean, even for you to say now you know what you're doing, do you know what you're doing as an attorney everywhere, or you know what you're doing in that practice group in that
I
office?
know what I'm doing. Like right now, I've been
Mm-hmm.
in my position for this year will make 5 years, so I'm 4.5. And now I feel like yes, I've kind of hit my stride because it's a
Yeah.
learning curve as well. What I've always said as well is that law school needs to look more like business school. I think like if they were closer to how the MBA programs are taught, that would also be more beneficial because so much of this is business. Even if you become a
Mm-hmm.
public servant, and a lot of people come into law school with majors and bachelor's degrees or master's degrees that are not really catered to the business space. So, like, I was a sociology and philosophy double major. I liked sociology because I like to examine how people think. But I did philosophy because I figured I want to go to law school. I'm going to read a lot. I'm going to write a lot. Might as well get used to it. But when I became an attorney, I didn't know how to run a business. I had
Mm-hmm.
been a solo practitioner. That was a difficult process. And I became a solo practitioner 4 years into the practice of law. Now, here at my corporate job, it still requires you on a higher level to know how a business is run so that you can assist them in making good business decisions.
Yeah.
So there's always a learning curve there. What I will say is that after 4 to 5 years, I felt confident that I could learn whatever I needed to learn to be effective in a certain practice area. And that confidence is helpful so that when if you have to job hop and you have to navigate different companies or different organizations, that confidence helps you to not shrink yourself and have some of that imposter syndrome coming into it because you feel like I don't really know what I'm doing. But to get
Yeah.
there, it's going to take you a few years.
It is. And honestly, you need that confidence to even begin to daydream about going somewhere else.
Hmm.
Because for a while, once you've made it, you're just like, I've survived. I don't even want to start over anywhere else.
Right.
This is it. And then it's like, okay, you get more confident and you're like, well, if I could figure this out, I can figure out something else. So now I could even consider a different practice group or a different office or a different whatever.
Yeah.
So Danielle, I keep thinking about something you said about casting a wider net. And I think that that is so appropriate because I went to law school to be an environmental lawyer. I went to
Wow.
law school. I moved from Ohio to Louisiana. They had the third largest Exxon plant. And I was like, I'm going to learn all about it. And I took the classes. And then they also have a lot of lobbyists, people who are like,
Hmm.
oh, you're passionate. That means you could sell the other side. And I was like, wait, I don't want an externship at Exxon. Wait. And so then I had to face that, right? And so then I got an internship at a criminal law practice. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is not it.
Hmm. You find out so fast.
And so then I got out of law school, moved back to Ohio, had to call lawyers in Louisiana, like, what lawyers do you know in Ohio? I start working in house at a big law firm. And so then I get there and I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? I say all that to say you need to imagine, or at least like roughly consider other things,
Yeah.
because the world is probably going to look different by the time you're out of school. Law school is 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 if you go part time. A lot can change in that time. And we know that from just 2025 versus 2020.
Yeah.
The world is completely different. You know what I mean? So you need to imagine what else you could do.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
too that your career is such a big reflection of who you are as a person. So if you are like me coming into the law school experience at 22, leaving the law school experience at 26, right? You're not the same person.
Yeah.
You know, I started applying to law schools, yeah, when I was 22. I was in my last semester of undergrad. I started law school at 23, graduated at 26. In that 3 year time span, I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor. And then I moved to, oh, I could do business law. And then I got pregnant in my last semester of law school. So now I'm a mom, and that kind of paused me starting my career. I passed the bar in September 2016. I didn't start working till July of the following year. And my first job out of law school was as a civil prosecutor for the Department of Children and Families. So I represented the best interests of abandoned and neglected children in state care. But my priorities were different. I'm a mom now. I
Yeah.
want to go home to my son. I want to, pick him up from daycare. I want the freedom of being present with him. But now I'm competing between the lifestyle that I want to live as a mom, and these bills have to get paid. And then part of that, lifestyle that I want to live as a mom is being able to give him things. Things
Hmm.
cost money. So I
Yeah.
have to make this money. And that shaped some of the decisions that I made early on in my career. I only worked for about a year for DCF. Then I went into private practice, did real estate law. That was billable hours. Hated that. I hated doing billable hours. I got my first taste of it as an intern in law school where I had to bill in 6 minute increments. That
Hmm.
sucked. Because I'm like, I don't know. Like the job that I
Yeah.
had luckily was not based on time. It was more so based on milestones, certain milestones that you hit during a case. But you still had to bill a certain amount, and that was tied directly to your job. And unfortunately, I lost that job right at the beginning of stay at home. So many things switched in a short span of time. And who I am
Yeah.
now, almost 10 years later, I don't want any of that stuff for myself, right? But
Yeah.
when you realize that you've evolved as a person and your priorities are different, the importance of casting your net wide comes in with what you believe you now have the capability of doing. Because for so many people, you become what you do every day, and you don't
Hmm.
realize like this is only one hat that I wear. There's so much more to me. There's so much more value than just like my label as an attorney. And sometimes I don't even like people calling me that because I feel like they put me in a box. I've applied to jobs that are outside of the legal field, and some of the main feedback is like, why would you want to do this? You're an attorney.
Hmm.
But there's more to me than just that. So I think that allowing yourself very early to cast that wide net and not being afraid to try things out and figure out what you like. To your earlier point, you don't specialize in law school, so you don't know what you like.
You learn through doing. I did get a little tiny bit lucky because I always grew up loving words and writing.
Hmm.
And so I did become the editor of our school newspaper. And then that transitioned into editing a lot when I was at the big law firm, which I consider to be the same as editing podcast episodes,
Yeah,
right? Because
transferable.
it is. And so, but you can only see that. I can only connect the dots looking back. At the time, I was
Absolutely.
just like, I'm kind of jumping. So I got lucky in that aspect because I still love words, right? I was just recording something for YouTube the other day and I was like, this is an editor, this is an editing app because I'm moving around sentences to make the conversation flow. That is editing, right? Like, this is not just removing the ums from your conversation, but that's because of my background. I've always loved editing and words.
Mm.
But I have a question for you. Is this why you decided to mentor other young lawyers so that you can kind of let them know what the profession is like without discouraging them from continuing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, growing up, I didn't want to be an attorney. I loved music, I loved the arts. I did musical theater, I was classically trained as a singer. When I graduated from high school at 18, I just knew I was going to be on Broadway. And so my parents are immigrants. They immigrated from Jamaica. Neither one of them was college educated. So education was not a choice for us. Once
Yeah.
they started having kids and they came to the United States, it was an absolute obligation. And although my parents were supportive of my interests, the feedback that I got was, I'm not paying for what people go on American Idol and do for free. So it
Yeah.
was very much figure out something solid. And if you're Caribbean, there's only a few areas that you can work in: doctor, lawyer, nurse, engineering, and maybe teaching. Okay.
Yeah.
So similarly to you, I've always been very good with words. Because I was a performer, I was very comfortable with public speaking. That was not an issue. I did debate in high school and I was good at it and I enjoyed it, but that wasn't where my passion was. So I've bounced around a lot. But one thing that I love about music is its ability to touch people. I can hear a song and remember a place and time from years ago. And I wanted to be able to help people through the music that I made or the performances that I did. And what I've realized, like you said, you always realize in retrospect, you never really realize in the moment, but in retrospect, in this pivot journey, what I realize is that I just have a genuine desire to help people. And
Hmm.
that's part of why kind of being a corporate attorney is a little draining for someone like me, is because you don't see a tangible benefit to what you're doing every day. It's great that the
Yeah.
check clears, but I can't really see that I'm making any lasting impression that is positive on anybody. And so while I did not necessarily desire to be an attorney, I kind of landed in this space. I know that there are a lot of kids that grow up and they want to do that. There are people who know for a fact, I want to be an attorney. And for, Black women, for African American attorneys, for minority attorneys in general, sometimes it's hard, even when you have a dream, if you don't see yourself reflected in that space, to believe that
Yeah.
you can get there. And so I feel like I have an obligation to give back everything that I have learned and maybe prevent someone from taking similar steps or having similar self defeating or self limiting thoughts by just sharing my experiences and also being a resource for them to access where it is that they're trying to go. So, absolutely, yes, that's why
Yeah.
I mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you mentoring with a formal organization, or is this just something that you do on your own as you're meeting lawyers while you're out living in Atlanta?
So I've been mentoring since I was in law school. That's why we call ourselves the FAMU, because FAMU has a very
Oh, that's
broad
cute.
alumni network, but also being an HBCU and FAMU Law being one of only six historically Black law schools in America. We are very big on looking out for each other, and we understand that we have a certain obligation to present ourselves with a certain standard of excellence because there are people coming behind us, and our school and what we represent means a lot to us. So this started in
Hmm.
law school. When I became a second year student, I started mentoring one else and saying, which
Love
professor do
that.
you have? Okay, let me tell you, when you do their exam, they don't want you to write like this. They want you to write like this. This professor likes crack. This professor likes Iraq. Okay, don't
Right.
mix it up. I felt like there's an obligation when you are climbing the ladder of success to reach backwards and help somebody come up with you. It's not for you to draw the ladder up underneath you. So
Hmm.
the idea of being a mentor and assisting other people started well before I became an attorney. When I became an attorney, I felt like it was important for me to give back because as a law student, going to networking events was very uncomfortable. And when you look at attorneys, you feel like, oh my God, you're up here and I'm but a lowly peasant. Like they feel unreachable, they feel untouchable.
Yeah.
As a millennial, I know that I'm an adult, but I don't feel like I'm an adult. So I also think it's important for us to like humanize ourselves as well. Like, yeah, I'm an attorney, but I also I gotta do this for fun. I'm a person too. And being
Yeah.
relatable in that way. So once again, people can see themselves in this space. So
Yeah.
I still mentor students that are at FAMU Law. I recently joined the board of Pipeline to Practice, which is a nonprofit organization that has a cohort or fellowship program for incoming 1Ls that are from underserved populations. So in that, I'm able to access law students as well, put on curriculum and programming for them, not necessarily as far as, this is IRAC method, but maybe things like, hey, this is how you manage your finances through law school, right? This is how you land your first internship. This is how you ensure that your mental health and your well-being is just as, up to par as your grades are as you're going through this process. I think that mentorship is very, very important because, again, like the debt that you owe to society is through the service that you provide to other people. So
Yeah.
I feel like mentorship will always be a part of what I do. I've been mentored by several people, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for their impact.
Yeah, mentorship is super important. Did you know any lawyers before you went to law school?
My oldest sister is a lawyer. She went to
Okay.
Howard Law. She graduated in 2000.
Sorry, I was just thinking that's pretty far removed because you
Mhm.
went in 2013.
Yes.
So,
Yes, it's
yeah.
very far removed. There's a huge age gap between me and that
Hmm.
oldest sister. I pretty much navigated the experience alone for the most part.
Yeah.
I didn't know attorneys personally. I grew up hearing about Johnny Cochran and then, of course, reading about like Thurgood Marshall and these very big Virgil Hawkins, these very big legal names. But I did not personally have anyone that I could really turn to for advice, for guidance. That's another reason why I do what I do and I take my mentorship very seriously, is because I know what it felt like to have to navigate this by myself and make mistakes and fall down and have to kind of dig myself out of it. So if I can
Yeah.
prevent someone from going through the same thing or at least feel like they have a listening ear, I will absolutely do that.
I love that. Service is what we owe to others. That's so important. I am trying to organize the questions that are the most important in my mind. So, I want to talk about you being in theater and musically inclined and all of that stuff
Mhm.
because you run a podcast called the Redefined Radio Podcast. Is that where you get to express yourself creatively?
I think that is where I've allowed myself now to express myself creatively. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The feedback that I got from my parents now, looking back in retrospect, I know what they were doing. They were like, hey, we don't
Yeah.
want you to be a starving artist. We want you to be able to make money. We want you to have something to fall back on. But as an 18-year-old who was in love with this and had dedicated so many years of my life to it, I interpreted that as, oh, they don't believe in me. So I stopped believing in myself. I had gotten into music schools and been accepted to different music programs. But once I got to college, I kind of just gave it up. But I've always loved music and it's always been a pull that draws me back to it. Obviously, going through the law school experience, it stifles your creativity. So that only made it
Yes.
worse, right?
Yes.
And I think that's why it took me so long to launch Redefined Radio, was because something that felt so natural years ago to me, and I could absolutely make sense why this is a part of me. Now, as an adult, I was like, this is nonsense. Like, what are you doing? You're speaking to a mic. There's not even anyone really there. Who wants to listen to you? Who wants to hear what you have to say? These were a lot of the thoughts that were swirling through my head. But I just got to a point where I was like, let's just do it, if for no other reason, because it's fulfilling to you and whatever
Yeah.
comes from it comes from it. But I don't want to leave this earth feeling like I could have done more and I just didn't do it because I was scared.
Yes. And now you know me, and I got to tell you, I am a dream pusher, right? So I'm going to be like, if you didn't write the music for your show, do that next time. If you're not singing your intro, do that next time. Because, like, we have so much time to do all the stuff. Like, my dream, it's almost laughable to even think about. But I'm just that person. I remember when I launched the show, and yes, I couldn't see myself here at 180 whatever episodes, but I've been waiting for like my website to crash because so much traffic. And my husband's like, do you know all the work you have to do to even get that far? And I'm like,
Yes.
yes. And he's in like website stuff. So he's like, by the time you're that big, you'll have engineers who will make sure it doesn't crash. I'm like, that's not the point. Because that's just me. Like, I think someone's going to listen to this podcast and be like, I want you to narrate my audiobook. Like, that's just how I am. So let me tell you, I'm here for it. You tell me all the stuff, and I would be like, yes. Have you talked to Danielle? Did you know Danielle does that? Have you done this? Because I
Yes.
think that, like, we have so much capability.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't necessarily have an opinion one way or another about law school because I'm the first generation college graduate. So law school was already like a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
But no one told me the whole point is just for you to be able to pay your bills. And so I had never even considered that I could create content to pay my bills.
Right.
Right? The whole thing was like, who was going to give me permission to do this? That was my challenge. It was like, can I do that? And mind you, I went to law school at 28. So I was 31 when I got out, fully grown. And I was still like, but can I do that?
And I think that's why it's so important to just open yourself up to the realms of opportunity, because you do not know where this will land you. You don't know, you just made mention that you used to edit your school's newspaper. That's very similar skill set to editing a podcast or editing content. So, you have to be able to think outside of the box of the realm of opportunities for where you can fall in life, and be okay with something serving you in a season and then not serving you anymore, and not afraid of the path of discovery to figure out what now serves you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so 2 more questions and that's it. So, Danielle, would you tell everyone what is the subject or mission of the Redefined Radio podcast and where they can listen?
So, the Redefined Radio podcast is basically your hub of inspiration. If you are looking to pivot in your career, if you are looking to make a life pivot just in general, if you're looking for inspiration to take the leap on something that you've just been sitting on, this is the podcast that you want to listen to. I share my personal journey and tips that I have used to overcome some of the things that you experience on this journey, like being a first generation anything, where you're not seeing yourself represented in the space, the imposter syndrome, the fear of success, which is way different than the fear of failure. But I also feature individuals who are either in the process of pivoting themselves or have done so that they have the ability to share their stories and what they learned along the journey. You may not be like me and be a lawyer in transition. You may be someone who just wants to launch your own business, but you don't believe that you can, or you feel like the field is oversaturated. You might be someone who kind of fell into something and then realized, oh, I really, really love this, but it's something that's unconventional. You might be someone where it took years for you to figure out what it is that you wanted to do, but you kind of have had a full circle moment. And all of those experiences are tying together. All of my guests reflect all of those different scenarios. So this is just a place to amplify voices of those who are looking to redefine their lives and what success means to them. We are available on all places where you can listen to podcasts. So if you prefer audio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We are also available on YouTube. The YouTube channel is Redefined Radio. And then I also create content, so you can find me on Instagram at Dani, Dani, Lyn, Lyn _redefined. And that's across everything. So Instagram and TikTok as well.
Cool. Okay. And so my last question, Danielle, is this podcast audience is mostly law students and young lawyers, so 5 years practicing or less. What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Anything. You can literally do anything. The experience and skill set that you have really allows the world to be your oyster. I think the most important thing for you to do is to expose yourself to people that, yes, may be practicing law, but also those that don't, or those that do other things like have side hustles or just passion projects, so that you can see those transferable skills in motion and just believe in yourself and the power of the education that you have. The Juris Doctorate degree is one of the highest degrees that you can get in higher education. It teaches you how to be an analytical thinker. It teaches you how to problem solve. But depending on what you do, it also teaches you empathy, how to understand other people and understand their circumstances. And that has value in and of itself. So don't limit yourself. You can always leave, come back, maneuver however you want to, but don't limit yourself, because you've made a huge investment in yourself currently, and it will pay off no matter what you end up doing.
Yes, I love that. So when you were mentioning your FAMUally, I love that you guys call it that, but also I went to an HBCU too. I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge.
Okay. I wanted to
Yes,
ask
so I
if you
love
went to
it.
Southern when you mentioned Louisiana, but I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Southern, FAMU, and then your sister went to Howard. So yes, we're covering 3 of the 6. That's
Yes.
awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing with everyone. I know the audience is going to absolutely love this. And I will talk to you later.
Thank you.